What if I told you that one of the most convincing gags in the Back to the Future trilogy, a moment that feels like a deliberate, clever editing trick, was a complete accident, not a special effect, not a post-production tweak, just a raw, unedited mistake that's been hiding in plain sight for decades, fooling millions. We think of filmmaking as an art of illusion, where every frame is meticulously planned, and with Back to the Future, that's mostly true. The trilogy is a masterclass in practical effects, complex storytelling, and pure cinematic magic. We celebrate the custom-built DeLorean, the lightning strike, the works, but sometimes, the most fascinating magic is found in the mistakes, the bloopers and continuity errors that are so seamless, our brains just accept them as part of the show. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on an unedited blooper that almost everyone mistakes for a clever special effect, and once you see it, you'll never be able to unsee it. More than that, you'll start to see that the perfection of these films is an illusion, built not just on genius, but on happy accidents, practical shortcuts, and the beautiful, chaotic reality of making a movie. Before we dive into the mistakes, let's just appreciate the pedestal we put these films on, and for good reason. Back to the Future wasn't just a movie. It was a cultural phenomenon that redefined the sci-fi comedy. Released in 1985, it came from the golden age of practical effects, a time when movie magic was made with physical artistry. There was no CGI safety net. If you wanted a DeLorean to look like it was freezing over after a time jump, you had to physically build one and blast it with liquid nitrogen. The team at Industrial Light and Magic, George Lucas's visual effects powerhouse, were basically miracle workers. Think about the DeLorean hitting 88 miles per hour and leaving those two fiery trails. That wasn't a simple digital effect. It meant rigging a real car with pyrotechnics and capturing it in camera, perfectly timed, over and over again. The clock tower lightning strike is another legendary piece of practical wizardry, a symphony of miniatures, forced perspective, and perfectly timed electrical charges all stitched together so flawlessly you feel the raw power of the moment. The editing itself is an invisible art. The goal of seamless editing is to make the cuts disappear, keeping you lost in the story. The editors, Arthur Schmidt and Harry Karamidas, were masters at this, weaving together countless takes, angles, and effects shots into a story that moves at a breakneck pace. And let's not forget the makeup. The transformation of the cast into their older selves was a triumph of prosthetic artistry. The sheer effort, ingenuity, and craftsmanship that went into every frame is staggering. At the 58th Academy Awards, the film was nominated for 4 Oscars and took one home for Best Sound Effects Editing. This reputation for meticulous, groundbreaking work is exactly why we've all been fooled for so long. We assume everything on screen is intentional. We see something that looks a little off, and our brain, conditioned by the film's overall brilliance, files it away not as a mistake, but as another bit of unexplained movie magic. And that's the heart of our investigation today. We're about to find out that behind the polished perfection lies a series of fascinating, and often hilarious, human errors that make the films even more special. Let's go to Back to the Future Part 3. Marty has just survived his duel with Mad Dog Tannen and escaped the Old West in the DeLorean. Pushed by a speeding locomotive, he lands back in 1985, right on the train tracks he just left, narrowly avoiding a collision with a modern train. The DeLorean is destroyed, but Marty is home. The next sequence is pure relief. Marty runs back to find his girlfriend, Jennifer, still asleep on her porch swing. He wakes her up, they have a heartfelt reunion, and they hop into his brand new Toyota pickup truck, the one he's been dreaming about. It's a moment of pure triumph, and it's right here that one of the series' most baffling special effects happens, and it's not an effect at all. Look closely at the truck. As Marty and Jennifer are talking, we get a shot from outside the driver's side window. Pay attention to his seat. There's no headrest. We can see straight through to the back window. Now, keep watching. A moment later, the camera cuts to a reverse shot over Jennifer's shoulder. And bam, a full-sized headrest has materialized behind Marty's head. 1 second, it's gone. The next, it's there. No transition, no flicker. It just appears. For years, fans debated this. Many assumed it was an intentional gag, maybe a final, weird ripple effect from all the time travel. But the truth is much simpler and, honestly, more interesting. This isn't a special effect. It's a classic continuity error. Born from the reality of shooting in a cramped truck, filmmakers often remove headrests because they block actors' faces and make it tough to get a clean shot from the back seat. So for certain angles, they just take them out. Then, for other shots where the absence would be obvious, they pop them back in. This is standard practice. The problem happens when the editor uses a take without the headrest right next to a take with it. On a busy film set, with a tight schedule and a million things to track, small details like a headrest can get overlooked. The director and editor will almost always choose the take with the best performance, even if it has a minor flaw. They're betting that the audience will be so caught up in the emotion of the scene, in this case, Marty and Jennifer's reunion, that they won't notice a headrest popping into existence. And they were right. The edit is so smooth and the emotional beat is so strong that our brains just accept it. It's not movie magic, it's a trick of human perception. While the headrest is a great example of a practical error, there's an even deeper secret hiding in these films. This one involves the actor who was famously fired from the lead role but still lingers in the final cut like a cinematic ghost. We're talking about Eric Stoltz. It's one of Hollywood's most famous what-if stories. The filmmakers always wanted Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly, but he was busy with his sitcom, Family Ties. So, they cast a talented young actor named Eric Stoltz. Stoltz was known for his intense, dramatic work, and he approached Marty with that same method seriousness. The problem, Back to the Future, is a comedy. Stoltz's performance, while technically strong, wasn't getting the laughs. After 5 weeks of shooting, the filmmakers made the painful decision to fire him and worked out a grueling schedule for Michael J. Fox to do both the show and the movie. Reshooting cost the production millions, a huge chunk of the original budget. For decades, the official story was that every frame of Stoltz's performance was gone, but that's not entirely true. In the frantic rush to reshoot with Fox, a few shots where Stoltz's face isn't clearly visible were kept to save time and money. The most famous instance is in the 1955 diner scene. Marty follows his dad, George, into Lou's cafe. After Biff humiliates George, Marty trips him. Biff gets up, shoves George, and confronts Marty. Then, Marty throws a punch. Pay close attention to that punch. It's a quick close-up of a fist hitting Biff's jaw. That fist, according to Biff himself, actor Thomas F. Wilson, belongs to Eric Stoltz. Wilson has said he believes they never reshot that specific angle with Fox. When you watch it, knowing this, you can almost see the difference. The angle feels slightly disconnected from the shots around it. It's a fragment of a performance that was nearly erased from history, but that's not the only spot. Other Stoltz cameos happen during the Twin Pines Mall sequence. In several wide shots of the DeLorean speeding away from the Libyans, the person behind the wheel is Eric Stoltz, not Michael J. Fox. Since the driver isn't identifiable from a distance, the filmmakers made the practical choice to keep the expensive footage. The ghost of Eric Stoltz is literally driving the DeLorean in its first major action sequence, a secret hidden by nothing more than camera distance and our own assumptions. The filmmakers were masters of manipulating not just time in the story, but our perception of time. Nowhere is this clearer than in the climax of Back to the Future Part 3. This is another case where a straightforward action scene is actually a carefully constructed illusion that plays fast and loose with physics for the sake of drama. That plan, Doc and Marty hijack a locomotive to push the DeLorean to 88 miles per hour so it can time travel before plunging into an unfinished ravine. As the train builds speed, they pass a sign that reads, "End of track 1, quarter mile." A quarter of a mile. That's 1,320 feet. At this point, the DeLorean's speedometer is already climbing past 70 miles per hour. Let's think about that. A car traveling at 80 mph covers a quarter of a mile in about 11 seconds. Even at 70 miles per hour, it would only take around 13 seconds. That's barely enough time for a few lines of dialogue. But what do we get on screen? A sequence that lasts for over a minute. In that time, Doc climbs from the locomotive to the DeLorean, has a conversation with Marty. They have their emotional farewell. Clara shows up, gets into danger, and needs a dramatic rescue with the hoverboard. All of this happens after they pass the quarter-mile marker. This isn't a blooper. It's a deliberate manipulation of cinematic time. The filmmakers knew the math didn't add up. They just didn't care. They understood that what feels right emotionally is more important than what's right mathematically. The goal wasn't to create a physics simulation. It was to create maximum suspense and a satisfying emotional payoff. They achieved this with editing. Cutting between different angles, the train, the spinning wheels, the speedometer, Marty's face, each cut resets our internal clock. It's an old trick, but it's incredibly effective. We get so engrossed in the immediate action that we completely forget about the physical limitations of the track. Let's go back to the first film for another subtle but significant discrepancy. This one centers on Marty's JVC video camera. When Marty first arrives in 1955, he proves he's from the future by showing Doc footage he filmed just before the Libyans attacked. It's a key scene that forces Doc to believe the impossible. But there's a big problem. The footage Marty shows Doc isn't the same footage we saw him film earlier. It's a completely different take. When we first see Marty film the DeLorean test, he's a little clumsy with the camera. His dialogue is slightly different, and his timing is a bit off. But watch the playback in Doc's garage. In this version, Marty is confident. He nails the shot perfectly, and he says lines that weren't in the original scene. So what's going on? Some fans theorize this is proof the timeline is already changing. It's a cool idea, but the real explanation is, once again, filmmaking practicality. To get the shot of the video playing on the TV, the crew had to film it separately. they couldn't just transfer the footage. They had to do a second take specifically for playback on a monitor. And in that take, Michael J. Fox's performance was inevitably a little different. The discrepancy isn't a clue about shifting timings, it's a byproduct of the production process. We remember the gist of the earlier scene, so when we see it again on the TV, our brain fills in the gaps and accepts it as a faithful replay. Beyond these major mistakes, the trilogy is packed with smaller blink-and-you'll-miss-it errors that are just as fascinating. One of the most talked about happens in the same diner scene as the Eric Stoltz punch. A frantic Marty needs to find Doc Brown, so he grabs a phone book and runs his finger down the page, stopping on Brown, Emmett, L. But look closely at that hand. That is not the hand of a 17-year-old. The hand we see is visibly older, clearly belonging to a stand-in or crew member brought in for an insert shot. These close-ups are filmed separately, often using a double, because it's more efficient than bringing the main actor back just to film their hand. It's a practical shortcut. The filmmakers bet that the action is so quick, no one will notice the hand doesn't match the actor. And they were right. These little human touches are everywhere. In the opening scene, Biff complains about George only having light beer, but if you look in the fridge, you can see cans of regular Budweiser. There is also a long-standing fan myth about Doc's drawing of the flux capacitor actually being labeled flux compressor in one shot, likely stemming from early script drafts. But this isn't visible in the final film. These small errors don't detract from the films, they enrich them. They're a testament to the human element of filmmaking, reminding us that these epic stories are made by real people working under pressure. Discovering these flaws is like finding a hidden signature from the artist. It doesn't ruin the masterpiece. It gives us a new way to appreciate the brushstrokes. These are just a handful of the secrets hidden in the frames of Back to the Future. The more you look, the more you find. What other secrets are hiding in your favorite movies? If you've spotted a continuity error or a blooper that made you do a double take, drop it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the magic of filmmaking, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next investigation. For decades, the Back to the Future trilogy has been celebrated as a near-perfect blend of comedy, adventure, and heart. Its reputation was built on groundbreaking effects and ingenious storytelling that made us believe a DeLorean could fly. But the real, enduring magic might not be in its perceived perfection, but in its fascinating, human-made imperfections. Headrest that appears from thin air isn't a weird special effect, but a relic of practical compromises. The punch thrown by a fired actor isn't a plot hole, but a fossil from a chaotic production history. The train that defies physics and the camcorder that plays back an alternate reality aren't lazy writing. They're examples of filmmakers choosing emotional truth over literal accuracy. These bloopers don't shatter the illusion. Instead, they add a richer layer to it. They transform the films from untouchable products into something more impressive, a testament to the creativity, ingenuity, and beautiful fallibility of the artists who poured their hearts into every frame. The result is a cinematic tapestry, woven not just with genius, but with happy accidents and practical magic, creating a story that is, quite literally, timeless.